your favorite coach is still talking. So you had a rant on Saturday night after hearing Hugh Freeze throw both of his quarterbacks under the bus following the loss to Arkansas. But Hugh Freeze was not done, because on Monday he went on Tiger Talk on basically the coach's radio show. And, he had this to say.
I mean, no offense whatsoever to Arkansas or to Cal. I love Sam Pittman. I hope he wins the rest of his games. But I'm telling you, the hard truth is we play them 9 more times, we beat them 9 times. And that's what's hard to take. And it's hard for our fans, I'm sure, and it's certainly hard for us. And you have 460-something yards, and we only had 50-something plays of offense because we turned it over 5 times.
Ari, do you know who this is?
I do know who this is.
You know who this is?
Who is this?
This is Dan Mullen after losing at Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
Well, who gained more yards?
Yeah. You know what's crazy is that if you have a quarterback or quarterbacks who are prone to turning the ball over, they're probably going to turn the ball over in the other games too, Hugh. They keep the score of the game because the points scored is the hardest thing to do, and it keeps track of who's doing it the best. So the reason why you had less points than Auburn was because your team was unable to score, which is the point of the game. And I just don't know what you gain from this. I'm hearing it, and it's like, is he supposed to be thinking that making fans feel better? Does he think that he's not throwing his quarterbacks under the bus again? Like, every single thing that there was about this interview just rubbed me the wrong way. It's just like, you lost, and the reason why you lost is because you gambled on your quarterbacks and you gambled wrong. It's your fault. Again, it's Tuesday. It's still your fault. What is the point of that? And by the way, it's wrong. I would bet any amount of money. I think I would leverage my entire checking account right now to be able to sim 10 games of that in a row. I guarantee you Auburn would not win 9 of them. I'm not even sure they win half of them, because you know what?
5 of them.
Yeah, I mean, they moved the ball on offense, but when you have a quarterback or two that are prone to turning the ball over, that's not just because they had a bad game. It's not like they had no turnovers for the past month and then had 5 in one game. Then maybe have this conversation. But they turn the ball over every single game, which is why you keep benching them and replacing them over and over again. Like, this is insane to me.
Here's the other piece of this. The turnover sucked. And actually, the most costly turnover is not one of the interceptions. It was the fumble the fumble into the end zone when you're about to score. That was way costlier. But here's why you can't say that. Because I think there are games where you can probably say that. You can't say that about this game. Because how did Arkansas put the game away? By running the ball down their throats. Remember, they get bailed out by a pass interference call, get a first down in their own territory, and then they never throw it again and wind up in the end zone. That is Auburn's fault. That is not Arkansas getting lucky. That is Auburn not being able to stop it when they know what is coming. You will lose 100% of the time when you do that. 100% of the time. So,
and that's just the physicality of the sport too. That's not happenstance. That's just man against man hitting each other and the stronger one winning. That's football in its purest form. So I understand that the man is frustrated. I totally understand it. I throw my controller against the couch whenever I throw an interception in the NCAA. I can't imagine if that was my whole life, my whole livelihood. And you feel like you're doing good things and people turn it over. He's not allowed to be frustrated. He is. But the way that this man behaves in public, it's just awful. And I don't know how long. I think that, it's still very early in his tenure there. And I'm not going to turn on the burner to, begin this hot seat discussion, because it's far too early for that, probably.
No.
But I will say
we will stop that right now.
No, but here, let me finish my point though. My point is that when you lose and then you behave like this, I think that you are shortening your own clock, however long it may be. I think people will get tired of you faster. I think people will like, do you think that Auburn fans are listening to what he's saying right now and are galvanized by it or are annoyed by it? Like, I'm very annoyed by it.
Yeah, I went on the message boards at Auburn Live last night just to see where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
They are annoyed by it. What they are trying to do, and I understand this because they've seen this all go down a lot of different ways, especially at that school. They're trying to avoid this becoming another Brian Harsin situation where they're trying to frag the coach a year and a half in. Because I do think like Hugh Freeze understands the assignment, and there is a path for Hugh Freeze to turn this into a winning program. But this isn't helping. And I think it's a source of massive frustration for the Auburn fans because they don't want to hear this. They just want to hear, we're going to make this better. And then they need to do it. The problem is they got to play Oklahoma this week, which, you know who's great at turning you over? Oklahoma's defense. Then they play Georgia. Then they have Kentucky and Missouri, or Missouri and Kentucky on the road, by the way. They're staring down the barrel of 5 consecutive losses if this does not turn around quick. And
well, here's the reality of the situation, though, Andy. And it's just like sometimes you are what you are, and like Auburn's going to have quarterback issues this year. And I think we could have predicted that they were going to have quarterback issues going into the year. But I don't like when a coach throws his players under the bus. But if he were to say in a diplomatic way, like, we went about recruiting the quarterback position a certain way this offseason, and we're going to have to evaluate how we do it again in the future. Basically, a nice way of saying we messed up how that
would be him taking blame rather than blaming the quarterback.
I think that would be the way out here. Like, the way out here is that our quarterbacks stink. We would win every time we played if they didn't turn the ball over and they listened to what I told them to do. Like that, your job as the coach, fundamentally, Andy, is to be able to get your players to do what you're telling them to do. It's almost another admission of guilt because the best coaches in America all have an idea of what perfection or success looks like, and their players do it. That's the definition of being a good coach. So don't tell me that the players aren't doing what you're saying. You can't get your players to do what you're saying. And it's either one of two things. One, you're not coaching well enough, or two, you did a terrible job with the evaluation of your position and they are physically incapable of doing what you're telling them to do. Either way you slice it, it is your fault. Either way.
Yeah. And so here's the thing. I want to give a little silver lining to the Auburn people because I'm looking in the chat and there's a couple Auburn fans in there and they're talking about, hey, remember when we lost to Diego Pavia in New Mexico State last year? Now we have to play him at Vandy. Like, think about that Auburn's afraid of losing to Vandy right now. That's where they're at. But I'm gonna throw a little silver lining at you. They are moving the ball. They're actually moving the ball really well. If they can stop throwing it to the other team. And look, I think I went and rewatched the game. Peyton Thorne certainly played better than Hank Brown in that game. I think he gives you a better chance to win. The last interception wasn't even Peyton Thorne's fault. It was the receiver alligator armed it. It bounced off his hands and into the arms of an Arkansas defender. Like, there's a way out of this. This team's averaging 6.2 yards or 6.3 yards a carry. Like, and you say, oh, well, that includes the games against the teams that weren't any good. Against Cal, which was the worst game they had, they averaged 4 yards a carry. Against Arkansas, they averaged 5.6. Like, Jarquez Hunter's worst game is 5.7 yards a carry. Like, they are moving the ball. And maybe they just need to try to move it on the ground more if moving it through the air is too dangerous. But when they are not throwing it to the other team, they are throwing it pretty well. Peyton Thorne's averaging 10 yards per attempt.
This isn't probably a USC Michigan discussion, right? Like, not USC, a Michigan discussion or an Iowa discussion where your offense just fundamentally can't get a first down.
Well, it is kind of, though. It is kind of, because what did I say about Sharon Moore last week? What was the whole point of that?
Yes.
You figure out a way to put your team in the best position to win a game with what you have. Hugh Freeze is not doing that because he keeps calling things that keep getting the ball put in danger when he has an offense that moves it very well on the ground. So maybe you adjust your thinking a little bit and you do the thing that wins you the game.
So you're saying play like Michigan if you're Auburn.
If you have to. If you go out there running your normal offense and you throw a pick in the first two series, shut it down and run it at them.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to watch that the Auburn-Oklahoma game or the Arkansas-Texas A&M game, you can watch on Fubo. Catch the biggest and the best games, including most top 25 matchups, most games from the Power 4 conferences, and many games from the Group of 5. Every Fubo plan includes the best channels for live college football: ABC, CBS, Fox, NBC, ESPN 1 and 2, FS1, Big Ten Network, CBS Sports, and CW. You can also get the ACC Network and the SEC Network on the Fubo Pro plan in select local markets. Cut the cord. Bring it with you wherever you go. Watch your live sports with Fubo. If you want to get signed up, there is a link in the show description of the YouTube video you're watching and the podcast you're listening to. Click that link, get yourself signed up, and get watching. Cut that cord. You don't need to deal with all that cable company mess. Cheaper, easier, everything you need with Fubo. Because you're running really well. You're good at running the ball.
Well, I will tell you, Andy, the spread for the Oklahoma-Auburn game opened as OU minus 2.5, and it has now moved to OU minus 1.5. So, people are thinking that Auburn's gonna, either win or
people
be
are
in the
realizing
game
that Auburn's not that bad, and there's an element of randomness to this.
Yeah, well, there's an element of randomness to fumbles and bounces and tips and stuff. I don't know if there's an element of randomness to the interception that Hank Brown threw before halftime. Like
No.
there was a line there between what is a random turnover and what is an unforced turnover and what is a mistake that you made. And I think that there were some unforced turnovers and there were some forced turnovers in that game, especially in the first half. So I think if Hugh Freeze goes back to Peyton Thorne, who's played a lot more and didn't have any, if that I recall, egregious, terrible mistakes, that maybe that gives you the best chance to win because your thought is to limit the backbreaking turnovers. But, Peyton Thorne at his best is not a very explosive player. So I guess we're not at the point now where, you bring in Cam Coleman and you're hoping for explosive plays downfield and moving the ball in chunks. What you're wanting to do is have
10 yards per attempt. You will take that. You can win the Heisman averaging 10 yards per attempt.
Yeah, that's true. But what I'm saying, though, is that you're probably going to be in a position where you are limiting throwing the ball downfield as much as you want because you don't want to turn the ball over. You move the ball on the ground, you sustain drives, you hold the ball longer, and you do your best to keep yourself in games without having a catastrophic mistake. So, I don't know. Here's the thing. I saw this in real life, Andy, on Saturday night. Oklahoma's defense is freaking awesome. So, if you are, in a position where you think that they're going to get 10 yards an attempt and not turn the ball over on Saturday, I think that you're probably going to be sorely mistaken. I think Oklahoma's
right, and they're probably not going to be able to run the ball as easily as they did on Arkansas. Arkansas's offense, I think, is really fun and exciting. I think it's possible to score on Arkansas's defense, and they would have scored more had they not turned it over. But that said, when you're down 3 and the other team just decides to run the ball, that's not the fault of the quarterbacks. That's not the fault of interceptions. That's you just getting straight up beat. That's your defense getting straight up beat. So you can't say that if you played it 10 more times, you'd win 10, or if you played it 9 more times, you'd win 9, because you wouldn't. Because if Bobby Petrino's thinking clearly, he just stops throwing too.
Yeah.
And you can't stop them.
They had a pretty easy time running the football at the end of the game there.
Yeah. So that's where it's at. But Hugh Freeze needs a win, whether that's against Oklahoma, whether that's against, I don't know that the one's coming against Georgia, but Missouri, Kentucky, Vanderbilt. Hugh Freeze needs to figure this out, and he needs to be the one who figures it out. It doesn't have to be a quarterback magically not throwing the ball to the other team. Hugh Freeze puts your team in a position where that quarterback doesn't have to throw the ball to the other team, where he doesn't have to put it in danger at all. You actually are capable of that. You have it. I said this about Kansas State. I said this about Michigan. Like, if you have a running game that gains 6 yards every time you run, you never have to throw if you don't want to. Yeah. So just don't if you don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there are only a certain amount of teams in this sport, and I guess Michigan, to a certain extent, maybe one of the few that can still run the ball for 6 yards a carry when the other team knows you're running the ball. Like, that's a really, like, the statistics there are nice.
No, but you obviously you're going to have to throw the ball a little bit. But the thing is, if you are running the ball that much, you're not going to be dealing with a lot of confusing coverages. You're not going to be dealing with a lot of disguised things because they're so scared of you running the ball. Mm-hmm. So, again, Hugh Freeze has the option to change some things and make this work. That's what the money's for. Figure it out.